Pierogi, thank you for coming on the Easy Pray podcast today.
Thank you for having me. This is an honor to be here, and I'm stoked to be here. I'm excited, and happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday to you as well. So, can you give me a little background about? I know you don't necessarily like to publicly disclose who you are, but a little bit of background in your cybersecurity and how you got into your YouTube series.
For sure. So I let's just say out of college, many years ago now it feels like, but over a decade ago, I was doing help desk IT work and doing things like imaging PCs, hardware troubleshooting. I'd get all the tickets and go fix whatever problem. So kind of to the core of me, one of the things that made me really happy and joyful in my work was helping people. It always was. If somebody has a problem, I wanted to be the guy that went in and fixed it, solved the problems. That's always been to the core. Even in my university work, it was get a problem. How do you solve problems? I always enjoyed that. So if something was broken, how do we fix it? And then that kind of led me over time into infrastructure, and then moved over to security because I thought it was just such an interesting topic, right? And started working for some big box security companies that maybe a little bit more legacy, not as advanced as what we see nowadays, but working for some legacy companies out there that working in security, doing endpoint security, data loss prevention, things like that. And then moved into the startup world. So some of these next generation type startup companies, really fast paced, but I learned a lot around the idea for that you can't keep up with this. It's really a matter of time, especially in the enterprise space. It was a matter of time before these companies were getting hacked. But I learned a lot of fundamentals of how to secure organizations and what it meant to do that and what the implications if you did not do that. And security became a priority, not just a conversation. It was at the board level. So I had some really cool conversations with government officials, CIOs of states, and I was sitting at the table with a lot of really interesting people that were solving really big real world challenges. You think about hospitals and what the impact of security means for hospitals and saving lives and protecting lives. Or one ransomware attack could mean a lot of lives lost. So I learned a lot of valuable information from that side of the house in the enterprise space. And then it really led me a couple of years ago to the scam baiting world. That's what they call it. And I remember seeing a few videos, and I thought it was so interesting that these scammers were doing this. We've heard about scams. We've gotten the robocalls before. But really to dive into the intricate details of how these guys work and what goes on in their minds and their whole process, because this is a business for them. So I said, let me fire up my computer and let me start making some calls to these guys. And that was in May of 2019. And here we are sitting here today doing this. And I've since left the enterprise security space and focusing on trying to protect people now and doing that every single day on YouTube. So.
That's awesome. Was there a precipitating event or something that triggered you to want to do this that sparked your interest in the scam baiting aspect?
Yeah, it really was just a curiosity. I don't know, coming in and seeing how they would react to me, and I thought I could put these guys and gals through some different loops as well, make them do some different things. And also just with my experience in security, I felt like it was a good fit for me. Now, a lot of people have asked if I've ever been scammed before, if I've ever had family members. No. The closest was my grandmother had one of it was actually a U.S.-based scammer. A lot of people think that there aren't scammers in the U.S. There certainly are. It was a U.S.-based scammer, and they call up the elderly, especially in Midwestern states. My grandmother's out of Minnesota, and they called her up and said that I was in jail and I needed legal fees and all that. She was going to get her debit card. Now, thankfully, my aunt was there. Her daughter was there at the time going to get groceries for her because she's a 90-year-old lady. And she didn't have her debit card at the time, or else she would have gone and given the information and been out tens of thousands of dollars. So I've heard so many stories, and it continues to reiterate and continues to give me purpose as to why I do this. I get probably hundreds of stories from $2,000 to $200,000. It really doesn't matter. There's a lot of pain, not just financial pain, but emotional distress that people go through that continues to fuel me every single day.
Yeah, that's the very similar interactions that I've had and thought process. That seeing people lose their life savings, their homes, it's a very motivating factor to. I need to do something. I need to educate people. I need to do something in a way that I can give back and help and hopefully prevent someone else from losing it.
For sure. And this isn't like somebody smashed your window and took a TV out of your house. Our bank accounts are very personal to us, and it's our livelihood. And these scammers are getting access to this, and they're taking everything. And so again, my goal every day is how do I protect people? How do I save people? Not just how do I go after scammers, but how do I save people? How do I make sure my next door neighbor who's by herself and 90 years old, she doesn't get scammed? So that stuff's really, really important to me.
Yeah, I love that. So you recently published a collaboration with Mark Rober and Jim Browning,
Yes.
uh, glitter bombs and taking it to the scammers, and you playing and toying with them. How did that come about? And can you tell the
Yeah.
audience about that?
Well, first off, Jim Browning and I are good friends, and he's a class act. Love working with Jim. He and I have a personal relationship, and he's as both of our channels have kind of grown. We just been buddies. We can text or talk on the phone and have some laughs together. And so, big shout out to Jim. Mark Rober as well. Everyone knows him for his glitter bombs and all the incredible videos he does on YouTube. And I got a call from Jim, and they were like, "Well, we know that you're able to get these packages a lot because I've done some other videos where I will confront scammers. I'll confront these money mules that are out there that are collecting these packages because I think it's such an interesting process that this is happening. The scammers are using our systems against us. They're using our shipping, whether it's FedEx or UPS or USPS. They're using Airbnb, so they're using even our startup companies that are out there. They're using Airbnb. They're using rental car companies. They're creating multiple cell phones with burner phones in it, and they put the system of money laundering in place. And I really wanted to highlight that. So when I got the call from Jim and from Mark, I was like, this was a perfect opportunity to do that because I could get Mark a lot of packages, and that's what we did. We sent about 7 or 8 packages over time, and we had the PIs there, and we had the fake FedEx kind of stuff, and dropped the package off, and the results show what they show. In addition to that, it was really interesting because we were able to, though we had that glitter bomb package that was a fake delivery, there were other packages tied to one of the glitter bombs to that Airbnb address. So the person actually was held responsible and arrested, which I think could have been the first arrest in the United States from anyone in the scam baiting community. So I was really proud of that because that project was about a 4-month project, a lot of phone calls, a lot of scam baiting, and we're actually starting to get some results and show some people things. So there's a big interest, I believe, moving forward, not just how do you protect from the scam calls, but what is this? There's some intrigue about this money laundering that's going on in the U.S. under our noses that the scammers are using. So,
Do you see a point where law enforcement or the FBI will actually have people in place like you and Jim and,
yeah,
and Mark to some extent that
right.
actually that just becomes a part of law enforcement that they're going after this type of fraud?
I think it's two things. So one, it's a resource constraint. Where do you put resources with your local law enforcement, or at the federal level? What kind of resources do you put towards it? Secondly, it's not big enough on a lot of people's radar, or the government, or even a big box company that sells gift cards. It's not big enough on the radar because the scammers, they work by the death by 1,000 cuts mentality, I believe. So they're not just laundering over $100 million at a time. They know how to stay under the radar. So I think it's a multiple. You have to collaborate with banks. You have to collaborate with the big box companies. You have to collaborate with the government, local and federal. And I would hope there could be some type of task force. But you look at other issues that our government faces, whether it's human trafficking or even drugs trafficking that goes in and out of the U.S. And those are very difficult things to stay ahead of. It really, really is. I'm happy to partner with anybody that wants to help fight this. I'm sure Jim is as well, because he sees it in the UK a good bit. So I'm happy to partner with anyone to help bring some solutions to this. But it's going to be a long process, I think, to get this under control.
Yeah, I think with those scammers will always find a way to separate people from their money
For sure.
because that's what they've chosen to do as a line of work, so to speak.
Right.
So can you take a step back and give the high level over like how do these scams work, where do they start, and how do they unfold?
Yeah. I think that it really starts with it's an easy barrier to entry. You look at a business, you have to think of these as businesses that these guys are, they call their victims customers, for goodness sake,
Oh, gee.
which is, it's crazy in and of itself. They've trained their employees. They have a system. They've trained them. They give them scripts, and they beat it into their minds that these are customers, and a lot of times that they're helping them. And these people believe half the time that they're actually helping people, or they actually do work for Amazon or whatever it may be. It starts a lot of the times with, like I said, that low barrier to entry. So the hiring process is easy. It's very inexpensive to hire these folks to be in these call centers. All you need are a few computers, internet access, the software that they're using. They use pirated software, and then they use free software like AnyDesk or TeamViewer, the remote software that they remote into the victims' computers. I think that's something that we have to think about from the beginning. That could cut down a lot of the scams that are out there by figuring out making it more difficult for them. But if you got a computer at home, you can probably they can sit at home even during COVID and scam people. From there, then it goes into setting up phone systems. They use these virtual phone systems that they're accessing through the web. There's different types of software that are dialers and things like that that do these robocalls for them. A lot of the times, these calls are going later at night, in the afternoon. They're leaving voicemail so that the next day they've got people hopefully calling in. And you've got this huge call list that's coming in. From there, the scammers, they usually have a frontline scammer that goes off of a script, and their goal is to connect to the victim's computer. That's all their goal is. Tell them what's going on, keep them on the hook, be good enough for that and personable there. Whether you're Amazon or Microsoft or PayPal, you name it. Apple's another one. Cash App's another one. So know the script, know who you're talking to, know who your victim is, get connected to the computer, and then pass it along. And in particular, like the refund scam, I work with these a lot, where the robocall is, hey, we're Amazon, and there's a fraudulent purchase on your account. Call us back as soon as possible. That's a really hot one right now. So the victim calls up because a lot of people have Amazon, right? Everyone's got Amazon Prime. So you're like, wait, I didn't order an iPhone. Who would buy an iPhone 11? The 12 Max is out now. I didn't order an iPhone 11 for $1,200. I want my money back. I didn't do that. So the second line scammer, these ones are more of your senior level scammers. They know what the heck that they're doing. They're usually pretty proficient with a computer. We have to give these guys credit as well. I know a lot of times scam baiters want to depict them as these, goofy, and I've done it before. I fall into that crowd where they're just kind of goofy people on the phone that don't know what they're doing, but they're pretty well trained and they do know what they're doing. These senior level scammers, they know how to work their way through these bank accounts. They'll go in essentially, and then they'll tell their victim, they'll manipulate it based off of how much is in their account. So let's say you had $5,000 in checking and $20,000 in savings, and you were owed a $1,000 refund. So from there, they're going to try to target $10,000. So based off of your account, so they'll take $10,000 from your savings, move it up to your checking, and then they will manipulate your bank account and make it look as if they have given you an overcharge. So instead of getting your $1,000 back, you got $10,000. Then the acting comes in where they're like, hey, ma'am, oh my gosh, you put in an extra zero or two extra zeros. And they're like, well, actually, this is your fault. This isn't our fault. You did this. So then you start to see some of the emotional manipulation that goes on. and put yourself in the shoes of an 80-year-old grandmother that isn't really proficient on the computer, and you have a recipe for disaster. Um, from there, they put some mechanisms in place on the computer to lock you out. They'll either add new users onto the device, or if it's depending like a Windows 7 system, which we know everyone knows it's end of life, but still a lot of people are still on Windows 7, unfortunately. They'll run a thing called syskey, which is an encrypted password outside that's essentially outside of your user password that will pretty much lock up your system. They put these kinds of things in place if they do it to hold your computer ransom. If somebody were to become smart to you and be like, hey, I know this is a scam, blah blah blah. They're like, well, your computer's locked up now. You need to give me money, or else I won't give you your computer back.
It's like the Plan B scam. If I can't directly scam you, I'm now going to ransomware you.
Exactly right. I'm going to hold your computer hostage. And by the way, everyone, if you've ever been syskeyed by a scammer and you're like, oh my gosh, this happened, try 12345 6. They use that password a lot. That's one of my little hints for everybody. I've been syskeyed a lot of times from scammers, and I'll do 12345 6, and it goes back into the system. But yeah, so they'll hold your computer ransom. From there, there's a couple ways. Then it goes into the money phase of how does the scammer get the money back? They typically work in gift cards, which we've talked about that a little bit. That's an easy way for them to stay under the radar. I've seen a lot based off of the dollar amount. I've seen a lot of where they're having you transfer money to Thailand, to bank accounts in Thailand, or else they'll have money mules in the United States where you'll send a parcel, you'll send a package, they'll have you wrap it up in aluminum foil and all this crazy stuff, and then send it to somebody who will then launder the money. So it really it's a crazy process. A lot of people, they tell me, how would anyone get scammed like this? It happens every single day, every single day.
Yeah, I mean, it seems, having talked to lots of people about scams for the podcast over the last year,
Yeah.
there's always there's the emotion, there's the urgency, there's the authority, and you just get people caught up in those three things, and it's just a matter of time before someone, like you said before, it's a numbers game. Someone's going to slip up and,
For
okay,
sure.
let me do that. Okay, I'm tired, I'm worn out. Okay, fine.
Right, and you hit the nail on the head with regards to the emotion piece of it. I haven't even talked about like the social security scams, and they have multiple levels too. They have the first person, that's the SSA officer, then they move it to the DEA, and it's just like the refund scam. The first line person that connects to your computer, they pass it off to the other one. That person is responsible for getting the money. But that one is such a scary one. And on that one, you could be 18 years old. There's a report out of a state where a university student lost $30,000 to
Ugh.
the SSA scammers because they're like, well, I didn't do all that money laundering. They got nervous, and these scammers know where to tighten the screws on people emotionally. Like I've got text messages, harassing messages from scammers. When I'm not giving them their money back, they will move to harassment, and they'll tell you that they're outside of your house. They'll tell you that they know everything about you, which can be true if they have your phone number. They're doing reverse searches on your phone number. They're looking up your name, your address. They're looking up everything about you. And that is another scary part that I try to highlight in my videos is these scammers know a bunch. They know your husband, your wife, your kids, your parents. They know everything. And that's the power of the internet, which makes it scary.
So you previously talked about the grandchild who's been arrested scam. Hey, your kid's been arrested, especially with spring break starting back up.
Yeah.
Hey, your grandkid went down to Mexico and got caught up with some of the wrong people. He probably really didn't do anything wrong, but he's in jail and he needs to be bailed out.
Right.
You've got the Social Security Administration, which I've gotten a variety of different ones of those. It's your account has been locked because of because of fraudulent activity. Someone's been using your identity without your name. Let's see,
Right.
without your permission. What are some of the other SSA ones?
The voicemails I get are around that, the fraudulent, there's been some fraudulent activity or whatever it may be. There's a lawsuit that's against you. Call us back immediately.
Yep.
And some of the ones I even get where it says like, if you're at work, you need to go home immediately. And these scammers, they're so confident that they believe like they can just bully people. And like you said earlier, it's a numbers game. So if they're doing 10 million calls and maybe 10% of those people either call back or pick up, and then a 10% of those people that call back or pick up actually fall victim to the scam and all. I mean, it really is a big numbers game for them. So they know which responses they get from doing different tactics. They've done it so many times. So it's the one that always gets me is the lawsuit against your name. That one gets people pretty nervous. So,
Yeah. I've gotten that call, and I'm like, well, what is the lawsuit about? And
right. Oh yeah.
it's funny. It's like once I start asking questions, they get at least with the ones that I've talked to, they hang up pretty quickly. So they must be used to people not pushing back at all, or they know who not to waste their time on. It's pretty crazy.
And I will say a lot of scam baiters, a lot of people, again, when I say scam baiters, these are people that are on their own accord calling up scammers themselves and trying to mess with them, waste their time, etc. So there's a huge community of people that call up these scammers. And again, please don't, you might be ticked off at them, but if you're not safe, don't just start calling up scammers. Warning, please don't do that. Like I said, they've got a lot of information on people. So it's, I had one call my personal cell phone, knew my first and last name and everything.
Yeah.
So they know information on us. So please. But yeah, a lot of scam baiters will call these SSA scammers because the SSA ones, they are very ruthless. They're vicious and they're angry and they work a lot of hours and they're agitated. So they know when someone's messed with them and they hang up quickly. One of the things that they do as well, this is a tip for folks, they will ask for your ID. They'll have you scan your ID and send it to them if they think that you're a victim. They'll try to get that information as soon as possible. So that's a big red flag. If you're talking to the government and they're having you take a picture of your phone and text message, send a text message of your photo ID to somebody. The government's not going to ask that.
Yeah. So, PSA announcement: do not ever send don't send photos and pictures of your passport, your driver license, your social security card, any type of personal ID to someone claiming to be from the government.
Correct. Yeah, you're not going to get into a texting relationship with the government. Some random phone number. So
you mean the DMV is not going to text me?
I know, right? And that's the other thing I try to tell people as well is think about sitting at the DMV and you're there for 3 hours or whatever, and now you've got the government and they're so advanced where you're going to be texting them all the no, it's. We're not that advanced yet. Even though we have great information systems in our government and we have incredible technology, we're not going to be texting the government our ID and everything. So
your local DMV person is not going to reach out to you and let you know your driver license is expired.
Exactly. So
the funny story, I'll give you a funny story behind that. At one point, I was going somewhere. And actually, I wasn't going somewhere. So my truck had gotten stolen, and I, finally got it over to. They found it, and I got it over to a place to get it repaired.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we've got a car rental place on site here, so we can get you a rental car through your insurance. And so I give them my driver license, and they're like, oh, your driver license is expired. And I'm like, how could it possibly be expired?
Right.
And of course, you can't rent a car on an expired license. They go, no worries. There's a DMV like 6 blocks down. We'll have someone drop you off and you can take care of it.
Right.
And I go down there and, wait in the lines and all that kind of stuff and say, hey, I never got the notice about my driver's license expiring. And they go, oh, your address is too long. At some point, we updated, last year, we updated the system, and any addresses that were too long, we just truncated
oh my gosh.
the address. And I'm like, well, I don't want to pay I'm not going to pay the late fee for not doing it. They're like, oh, no, we're absolutely waiving the late fee because we knew everybody would come in. And I'm like, well, why didn't you just fix the problem and put the right address on there?
Oh my gosh. It's one person's idea probably was like, yeah, we'll just truncate all the addresses that are too long and it'll save us all this time and we'll put the burden on everyone else to have to come in, versus just fix the dang problem.
So like that's my the government institutions don't necessarily think of what's expedient, convenient.
Right. Yes. They want to do the complete opposite. Like, how do we make this as inefficient as possible?
So
So
I think one of the things that I'm kind of curious to get your feedback on this.
yeah,
I think it was I had a previous interview with Jim Browning, and I
yes,
think he talked about that the scammers are now starting to coach their victims in terms of like don't talk to your friends, don't talk to your
hmm
relatives. When you're going into 7-Eleven to pick up your gift cards, here's
yeah,
what you need to tell them. What are you sort of seeing that thing as well?
yeah. That's from my experience. It's again, this is just as much a mental thing than a technical thing. And this is why I try to show people in my videos. And even when I stream, I stream a bunch on Twitch and on YouTube. And, we'll have, in one of our recent YouTube streams, almost 12,000 people in there. And I'm trying to tell everyone, focus on the mental aspect of this as well. Focus on the mental cues as to how these scammers, because they've been taught how to do this. They've been taught to coach the victims. And yeah, they do go in and um, they say, hey, if somebody asks you, because yeah, now Target or Walmart, they're getting better and they're saying, well, you can't go and buy a card for Amazon. Like, why are you going to Walmart to buy cards for Amazon? And the scammers are saying, well, tell them that it's for personal use. Tell them if you need to send $40,000 to a bank in Thailand, it's because you're opening a business. Because the bank's going to be like, well, why are you doing this? Why are you sending this money? Why do you need to get out all this money? Your account has 40,000 in it. Why are you taking all the money out? And the scammers know that there's going to be this pushback. And the victims, unfortunately, they are listening. They're scared. The scammers will tell them, don't even tell your husband or wife. Like that's how scary and how personal this gets for the victims
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want anyone to know, especially the SSA scammers. They'll tell them that we will know if you tell anybody. We're watching you, we're listening. If you tell anyone, um, sit down, please. I'm sorry, the dog. Can you hear the dog walking around?
I
Can
thought
you?
I heard that. I thought you were typing
Okay,
on the keyboard, but the
I'm sorry.
editors will be able to take some of that
Okay,
out.
can I let him out then
Yeah,
really
yeah,
fast
yeah.
so that
We'll
we'll
pause.
edit this out? All right.
Yeah.
Rock, out. Come on, out. Go out. Out. Go out. Out. The joys of not working we're in the process of getting an office building to work in as well, so it's just, I apologize. Okay. So I think that's a huge aspect of this is the mental manipulation that the scammers are putting their victims through. And again, it's when you go to Target and the person hears that you need to buy $2,000 of gift cards and they push back on it, like, no, this is personal. I'm buying a present for my grandson or whatever it may be. But I will give a lot of credit. I hear a lot of stories where the person that works at CVS hears the grandpa that's going to get all these cards and they said, no, that's a scam. You'll hear that a lot more, and we need to hear more of those stories. The scammers will eventually evolve, but
Yep.
right now it's you don't tell anyone, don't tell anyone. They'll figure out a way, but the don't tell anyone, tell them it's personal is really a common tactic they're using.
I know I was talking with someone who their family, their parents live in a retirement community, and across the street from the retirement community, there's the 7-Eleven, the convenience store, whatever it is.
Right.
And they say they have people coming in there every single day, trying to buy ridiculous amounts of gift cards. And so, like, because they're right
Gosh.
next to the retirement community, they're like telling, like, no, if you want more than $50 of gift cards, we are not going to sell them to you. You're
Mm.
like, you need to call your kids, you need to talk to some friends, talk to the workers at the
Yeah.
senior care facility because this is a scam.
Huh.
And I'm glad that like some businesses are getting smart about that. I was a while back sending money overseas to a family member, and it was the first time I had done that. And the bank,
Mhm.
I set up the wire transfer and sent it, and the bank called me the next day and was like, "Hey, we noticed you're sending a wire transfer and we're holding it. Can you tell us why you're sending this money?" I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we're helping out a family member overseas." Well, are you sure that you're talking to your family member? And I was thinking,
That's
like, why
great.
would they? And I started like talking with this woman, and she was so good about like, look, we know there's a lot of scammers, and they're telling people not to say that they listen in and they know. Like, trust me,
Right.
they're not listening in on this phone call. Did anyone tell you to send this money?
That's great.
And I was so excited. The bank was like, she was relentless about like not taking my first, oh yeah, no, I'm sending it to a family member. She
Right,
did
right.
not take that.
That's
Well,
amazing.
have you met them in person? How did you communicate with them? I mean, she was
Wow.
relentless. I was like, oh, I was telling her like, this is, in a sense, it's really annoying, but I'm so glad you're doing this
Yeah.
because so many people fall victim to this. And if more companies pushed back and just asked questions, I think it would help reduce the issue.
Yeah, and no, that's amazing to hear. And I think also with the investments that these big banks, the Wells Fargo, Bank of Americas of the world, they invest in cybersecurity to protect their infrastructure. I would assume there's some type of AI that's watching all these. There's got to be something that's watching all these accounts that's popping these red flags like Christmas trees. That would be really cool to have conversations with those banks where it's like, yeah, you do have a internal fraud department probably that's watching over these wire transfers, et cetera. But there's got to be some type of algorithm as well that can show, well, why did this person go to Target and they keep dropping $1,000 every couple of days or something like that at Target, and it's like 1,000 on the dot because it's $1,000 of gift cards. Because the scammers they're adapting as well, and they're not just trying to do that big wire transfer. They'll have you go get $1,000 here at Target. They'll have you go get 1,000 at Walmart. They'll have you go to Best Buy and get 1,000, and they're spreading it out so that it's staying under the radar. But I love hearing times where the banks are calling these things out. That's amazing to hear.
Yeah, I mean, the technology has got to be there from the
Mm-hmm.
financial institution side to be able to at least red flag some of these transactions. I
For
mean, I
sure.
have absolutely gotten credit card numbers float around and get used left and right,
Right.
but I get more transactions that are stopped by the entity than by the financial institution than ones that actually get through. And it
Right.
always makes me wonder. There was actually one that I forget whether they called or emailed or it was through it may have even been through the app that I got an alert saying, hey,
Right.
we think there's this fraudulent transaction at a big box hardware store,
Mm.
which was like 10 miles from my house or less than 10 miles from my house, which caught my attention.
Right.
It's a big box store that I would normally shop at, yet for somehow they flagged this specific transaction as concerning.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
and they blocked it. And I called, I obviously did not click on the link in the email or wherever it
Right.
was. Even if someone called me to tell me that, I would, let me hang up and
Right.
call you back, call the number on the back of the credit card. For one, I wanted to confirm that I had the card with me because it was a local charge.
For
And I
sure.
called back in, they're like, oh, yeah, it was at your local store, and it was a legitimately blocked transaction. So they're obviously able to detect things that are suspicious. I don't know what was
Right.
suspicious about a transaction at
Right.
a store really close to where I normally shop, but so we
Yeah.
know it's technically possible.
For sure. Yeah. No, I think you draw parallels, like even in the endpoint space. I'll try to kind of go enterprise and consumer here. To your point around, yeah, like in antivirus, it used to just be you had a bad file, you wrote a signature for it, and then everything is like, is this good or bad, right? In security, we all know that that's not like the case anymore. You can't just say everything is good or everything's bad. Like hackers are using known processes on Windows that are good to do bad things now. So you can't just say everything's good or bad. And that's the same for. I would hope that when you look at like AV stuff, there's behavior based. People are looking at behavior analytics. You're looking at SIMs that are correlating all this data. And my assumption and hope that financial institutions, credit card companies, they're starting to look at, wait, this is way out of your behavior. Even if it's local, this is way out of your behavior. Did you do this? Like I got an email one time from, well, it actually wasn't a behavior. It was a random that I got this charge from Target, and it was up in New York where I do not live. And I'm like, what the heck? Like somebody hacked my account or something or whatever. But I got at least the notification that something was happening, and I went and checked it out. And my credit card company fraud team was amazing around that. But again, more behavior based stuff. Like this person doesn't go and spend all this money at Target all the time. And again, it goes back to who's Who's the one that's supposed to be watching over it? Is it a service you pay for? Is it the credit card company? Is your financial institution? Is it the actual vendor? Is it Target? Is it Walmart? Who does that responsibility, or is it just on us? So
Yeah, and that's the challenge. I think major corporations have budgets for cybersecurity.
yeah,
You know, my grandparents didn't have a budget for cybersecurity.
right,
I don't
right,
have I don't have a cybersecurity line item in my personal budget. I mean, there are
right.
things that I do, but
Hmm.
it's not like someone who's struggling to put food on the table and keep their bills paid
Right.
is gonna invest extra money in cybersecurity. Let me
Right.
replace my router that's 10 years old with something that isn't hackable, or
Correct.
sorry, not that it isn't hackable, that hasn't already been hacked.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's future going to be hacked. Yeah.
And I feel bad for consumers because it's
Hmm.
our ISPs are not going to step in and protect us on the internet. Our
Yeah.
wireless carriers aren't going to protect us from the phone calls. It's kind of we're left to our own devices.
Hmm.
And I'm glad there are some corporations that are seeing that to be a good member of the community, they need to protect the community when they can.
Correct.
But it's unfortunate that consumers are often left holding the bag on these types of scams.
Yeah. And I applaud some of the wireless carriers. I won't name any names. It's funny. I switched from one to the other, and I've gotten more scam calls since I switched over, it's so crazy to think about the uptick in scam calls. Just switching carriers. But I think there's some things that the carriers are trying to do to prevent some of these calls from happening, or at least notify the person on the other line that this is a potential scam call. So I applaud them on that. I applaud what some of the banks, again, financial institutions are trying to do. I talked with a big box. I call them big box company. Those retailers. I talked with someone who works internally at one, and they think that the fraud is down with gift card scams, but we all know it's not. Again, this is an approach. I believe in stopping these scams. It's all of these companies working together, and
Yeah.
then you start to look at law enforcement. How do you work with them too? So I think we're making some strides, but there's still a lot more work to be done. So I want to give credit where it's due in some of these cases. I'd much rather have something say potential scam call or spam risk or whatever than just nothing and
Yeah.
getting a voicemail saying I'm about to get sued. So
Yeah. So what are some of the craziest like interactions that you've had with some of these scammers?
um, it's I laugh because I mean I've called thousands and thousands of scammers over the past couple of years and been on the phone for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I think some of the funnier ones, because I do play a grandma character on a lot of these and have my voice changer. I got married to a scammer one time. And the funny thing was, they had a scammer in the background, and I went on a website and had him read out, like, Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. He went line by line, and we did the vows, and I mean, it was pretty cringy because the scammer on the other side was like, I want to kiss you, you're my bride, and he's going, making these kiss noises, and I'm streaming in front of thousands of people, and at what point is this just too much? I didn't know it was going to get that far. But that was really funny. I've been proposed to by them many times. I actually had one write out a will for me. So I was a grandmother and I had all this money, and I had him type up a will that pretty much said that I was writing out all my children out of my will, and that they were going to have to play a Hunger Games style competition to get one of my cars or one of my houses. I mean, just some ridiculous stuff. And so that's been interesting. Also, I've been learning Hindi, so I'm very big on language. My wife is Russian, so I've been learning a bunch of Russian. But I think immersing myself into their culture and learning the language that they speak, and the different dialects as well that they use, that can help with information gathering. So not all of that, India is a very, very big country, so they're not all from the same area. And you hear certain things and certain cues. So just by the way that they speak their language,
Hmm.
it's been very interesting to me. So I've gotten on a lot of phone calls where I'll start speaking Hindi to them. I'll say "Abgusa kyo horaheho," like which means "Why are you getting so angry?" Um, or "Dhanyawad" even, which is "Thank you." And to hear them kind of flip a little bit, like when that clicks in their brain that this person knows what they're saying or can speak the language to them. And I'm not abusing them. I'm not cursing them out. A lot of people want me to cuss, like say curse words to them, but that doesn't get anywhere. That doesn't further what my mission is. So I've had some very interesting calls where I'll start speaking in Hindi to them, and they ask me like, "Well, how did you know that?" And I'm like, "Well, I know exactly where they are based off of how they're speaking Hindi, so I'll start to throw out some landmarks that might be near them." And they'll like, "Oh, you know that place, or you know that hotel, or you know that restaurant?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I've been there before. How do you know?" You know, because they try to pretend like they don't speak Hindi. They try to pretend like they're from the U.S. And I start to slowly but surely let them know. And I just released a video recently where the guy just completely flips his lid on me. And is so abusive because I know the call center, this call center is so vicious. They've been doing it for so many years that they don't take any stuff from people. So that was an interesting call too, but it's every which way. And then even the glitter bomb ones, those have been really fun too. Stringing them along and then kind of getting some of their reactions when you send them a glitter bomb. So
Yeah,
yeah.
the glitter bomb reactions are always the best.
Hmm.
Are there any particularly scary interactions that you've had?
Yeah. I don't get scared by them like to me personally or physically or whatever. I've gotten every threat from them. The So two things. I'll say like the saddest ones. I'm an emotional dude, so if you watch a stream, half the time I'll be in tears anyway. That's just who I am. I just it's no holds bar for me. I'm just who I am on my streams and in my videos because this stuff means so much to me. When I hear a victim in the background and I hear them laughing about the victim, they celebrate these victims. Just like you closed a big deal at a company and then they're clapping and I hear that stuff in the background. And then I hear the derogatory comments they make about people. What they make about me, that doesn't bother me, but they make about actual victims. That stuff makes me sick. It really, it gets to me. So I've dealt with a lot of times where I've dealt with victims. I hear victims in the background, and I run into these victims as I'm doing these calls. That makes me really sad. And there's been so many where you'll hear them coaching the victim, "Hey, you got to go get gift cards," and you feel like you're in such a helpless place. You can't do anything about it at the time. So that stuff really makes me sad when I encounter it. So how do I minimize that as much as possible? Or maybe I'll get access to a certain piece of information and I'll call a victim up and they've already lost $2,000 or they're in the process of being scammed. And I'll get on the phone with their bank. We'll stop the scam from happening. And then 2 days later, he's like, "Well, I just got these gift cards at my house." I'm like, "Well, what do you mean you got gift cards? I thought we stopped. We got them off your computer." And he's like, "Well, they went onto my Best Buy account and they ordered $2,000 of gift cards after they took 2,000 out of my bank account too."
Ugh.
And I'm like, "Okay." So they ordered $2,000 of gift cards. Let's get on the phone with Best Buy and tell them what happened. Don't do anything with those gift cards. Do not do anything.
Don't read the
Get,
numbers off the back to verify them.
Lo and behold, I talked with them a couple days later. The scammers called as Best Buy. They pretended to be Best Buy. Got him to scratch the cards off and give them the information on the back. And it's such a helpless feeling. You feel like you're doing, and this is one person, this is one grandpa that lives by himself in a retirement home, has no family, and it just crushes me because here I am working directly with this guy telling him this is all a scam. I gave him a password. I said, "If anyone calls you, this is the password. This is a personal password for you. So that if any scammer calls you and they don't know the password, hang up, you know." And he still fell victim to them even after we worked. So a lot of interesting experiences like that. The scariest one is, and my hands still shake thinking about it. There's a scammer that was trying to steal, and this was earlier on when I first started. He was trying to steal a bunch of money from me, and he actually had a victim. He called his secretary, he had her call me up, and her voice was trembling.
Oh,
It was the saddest thing I ever encountered. Scary too, because she said, "Oh, yeah, I almost got scammed out of $1 million, and this guy, his name was Jerry. Like Jerry helped me get my money back." I'm like, "Are you okay?" Like I was in my grandma voice. I think I got off of the grandma voice. I was like, "Are you okay? Like, please tell me. Like, this is a scam. Like, are you okay?" And she said, "No, this is not a scam. I promise." I texted her because it was her personal cell phone. I texted her and said, "Hey, if you're in trouble, please tell me. I want to help you right now." And she said, "No." And this is, again, the scary thing about it is the manipulation that they put on their victims. I mean, the lady's voice was trembling. She was
oh,
probably going to lose it all if she didn't help this guy. So they turn their victims into money mules, and then the victims actually help them. They use that
oh.
against them. So that's very scary when
It's
you get this next level of scamming.
it's extortion on top of fraud.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's unbelievable. So
so
I just got to chill thinking about it because it's sad.
so as we wrap up here, we're like, what are the things that people should be? Part of me says just don't ever answer your phone.
Yeah,
Um, don't ever
right.
open your email. Don't ever click on a link. Don't go on the
Yeah,
interwebs.
right.
But we know we're going to do those things.
For sure.
What what are a couple things that people can do that should be like if they hear this phrase, if they hear something, someone says something specific, like
Hmm.
what should be that red flag that should go off in their head saying, "Oh my gosh, this might be a scam." That would just kind of put them on an extra sense of alert.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people too they talk about, well, if I heard someone that was on the phone that sounded a certain way or whatever, I know immediately. You can't make assumptions like that.
Hmm.
There's scammers that are starting to pop up in the U.S. Like I said, the grandmother scammers, and those folks are ruthless, and they'll show up at your house, which is scary. I think we have to take it upon ourselves to have that personal, I call it whatever, personal security, I call it, which it's not just not clicking on a link to get a virus or a phishing attack or whatever, but you have to be aware. And you have to, it's not, I call it the healthy paranoia as well. You can't, the internet's such a great thing and technology is such a great thing. But with those kind of great things, we have the responsibility to protect ourselves. We have to take that just as if we want to lock our door at night. We
Hmm.
have to lock our mind sometimes too, or we have to put a passcode in our mind, like where if somebody does call us up and it sounds believable, it sounds legitimate, okay, I understand that. Let me go verify. The trust but verify. Sometimes, if
Yeah.
you want to be, if you're a trusting person, go verify it somewhere else. Because a lot of the times the scammers, if you do hang up the phone from them, they'll kind of give up. If you're earlier on in the process, again, we deal with Amazon every day. We deal with all of these big companies, Microsoft, Norton Antivirus, McAfee, you name it. So these big names that we hear all the time, we trust them.
Yeah.
And they have brands behind them. You have a brand behind Apple. You have a brand behind Amazon. We trust these companies. We trust them with our accounts. We trust them with our packages, with everything. And that's a big issue because the scammers are using that against us. So when you hear the scammers leave you that voicemail or get you on the phone and go through their script, again, looking at as many sources as possible, find the source of truth. What is your source of truth? Is it a person? Do you run it by a person? Having another person to hear what's going on might help. Because maybe we're not going to be able to block everything. I don't know. You're not going to be able to block every spam call. I think also too, for those of us that are technologically aware and understand these types of scams, it's shame on us if we haven't had conversations with anyone and everyone that we can.
Yeah.
Um, just like we want to have a conversation about the new CD that came out that was great, or the concert we went to, or the movie that's coming out, or who we voted for, or who we don't like. If you have so much passion about that, this is such an important thing. Have a conversation with somebody as well. Make sure your grandmother or your mother or your brother or sister knows about this stuff, because scammers don't care what race, religion, age, sex you are, anything. They don't care.
Yeah.
They see money. So you gotta have conversations about it. So
Yeah, I really like the trust but verify. I think that I think it's something that we should be talking to our parents and our grandparents about. Like,
right,
if you ever get a phone call that seems fishy, or that someone's wanting to talk to you about technical stuff that you don't understand,
right,
like, call me, call my brother, call so and so. Don't worry, we're not going to look down on you, but we want to make sure that we're watching out for each other. If I get a weird call, I'm going to call you. If you get a weird call, you call me,
right.
because it
Yeah,
seems to be that interaction with other humans outside of the scammer really works as a good sounding board of, like, is this legitimate or not?
right,
I got a phone call with the caller ID matching my electricity provider,
right.
saying they were from my electricity provider,
Yes,
saying, "Hey, your bill is really small, but it looks like you missed a payment or two, and the guy's on his way out. Let's just take care of this right now over the phone."
right.
And I recognized the phone number, so I'm like, oh. Then I thought, oh wait, they can spoof that, and it wasn't this outlandish story. It was so incredibly plausible
Right.
that I almost was like, oh yeah, let me go look at that. And I was like, no, 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 I'm relentless about my accounting. I know that I paid that bill,
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I just hung up. But it was like, they could be really, really convincing.
Yeah. I've had a few spoof calls from the White House, from the FBI on my Google Voice account. So they're good. These guys. Again, we've depicted them as kind of silly characters sometimes, but they're very very good at what they do. It's a big business for them. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, if not higher now. The last thing I'll say again, because I'm very big on the psychology of this. Um, And I think one of the reasons why the senior citizens do get scammed is, from the time period that they came from. We lived in a world where the kids could go play outside and maybe you leave your door unlocked at
Yep.
night and sipping sweet tea on the front porch and all those kinds of things and a kind of a simpler time. And they didn't have access to all this stuff that's out here. And they were trusting. That's
Yeah.
what, the trust but verify. And I wish we could be in a world where we can just trust people. We can trust someone's word. We can trust what they're saying. But unfortunately, we all we hear is like negative, bad news that's out there, and you have to have this paranoia now. Unfortunately, but a lot of these grandparents in that elderly age, even when I talk with them on the phone, they trust me immediately.
Yeah.
I call them up and I say, I know this is a weird call, but you're being scammed right now. And so they were trusting those people. Then they're trusting me. Then it's built upon this trust. And when you think about that from a cultural standpoint, because even the scammers, they build their business off of trust too. How they launder money is and I could talk for 2 hours on that. Their money laundering system that they do, it's built on trust, and I think that's how they can connect with a lot of these victims. So we've got to protect the elderly. We've got to protect ourselves too. We got to have conversations about these types of scams, and because they're going to evolve, they're going to change, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. So
Yep, they're going to keep happening, and once we get one figured out, it'll morph into something that we don't understand for a while.
correct. The last thing I do want to add, I had this in my mind, and I really wanted to say this. This is a fresh new thing, in my opinion. They're starting to have their victims create Western Union accounts online. Very easy to do. That's a part of their process. I've seen particular call centers do that. From there, they will know the login and the password, so they either use that as a mechanism to launder money through your account without being caught, or they'll have you launder money for them, like whenever they get their scam going. The second thing is they're using Zelle, which is really, really big right now, because all you need is a name and an email address. So shame on the banks for. I'm sorry. That's you talk about barrier to entry to be able to launder money in a couple of clicks of a mouse like that. Very very scary. So be on the lookout as well. Everyone, I hope you're paranoid enough to go look at your Zelle accounts right now in your bank, and make sure you have no Western Union accounts on your email. Look at those two things. So
Yeah, I mean, I always worry about these untraceable, untrackable, unreversible financial mechanisms and what they're linked to.
Right.
I have a bank account that is specifically associated with, that I use for those types of transactions with a specifically small amount of money in it.
For sure.
That
That's smart.
that way, if something goes sideways, I'm not, they're not in my 401k,
Right. Oh, yeah.
they're not in a bank that's associated with a retirement account
Right.
or a mortgage or anything like that. It's like, hey, there's $200 in that account. Sure,
Yeah.
it would stink to have someone get it, but heck, at least I'm limiting my losses to like $200.
For sure.
Different institution. I don't have a credit card with them. I don't like. That's the only thing I use that account for.
Wow, that sounds like a great service that the financial institutions could put in place where you could say, hey, I want this protection service where you have access to only a certain amount or whatever it may be, right? And you'd have to go through a lot of hoops to be able to get to the other money, right? That would be a great idea,
Yeah.
I think. So,
Okay, banking
excellent.
institution listening to this call, implement.
Right, implement, please. I'm sure it's really easy to implement something like that across,
But again, like I think my primary my credit cards, I have alerts
Right,
set up for if there's an international transaction,
right,
send me an email, send me a text message, alert me in the
right,
app right away. If there's a transaction over a certain dollar amount, I
right,
want an alert. Like because I'm paranoid about like you said, I have a healthy paranoia
for sure.
about these kind of things. Like if something happens outside of my normal what I normally spend in a day, I want that extra feedback
Mhm.
of why did I do that? Did I do that? Did I not do that? Did my wife make a charge and not tell me
Right,
about it?
right,
Like
yeah.
anything that happens out of the ordinary, I want to know about it.
I agree, and it's that again. I go back to my enterprise security experience, where you talk about like the general heartbeat of your enterprise. It's the same thing with our lives that we live. We should have a steady heartbeat of what is acceptable behavior every single day, and we have technology that can pull that data. I mean, there's things that will pull all of your financial data and tell you how much you spend a month. So
Yep.
why do we not have things in place that say, wait, this is way out of your heartbeat? Like we need to just block it from happening. So I think things will get better in that sense over time. I
Yeah.
hope it does because I think that's how you can harness technology to really protect people. So
I totally agree. If Pierogi, if people want to find you on YouTube, and I'm sure that's the
yes.
primary way that you interact with people, I guess Twitch also. How can people find you on YouTube and Twitch?
Yeah, so Google can be your best friend. You can always type Scammer Payback into Google, and a lot of my stuff will show up, whether it's my Twitter, my Twitch, Instagram, Facebook. We have all this stuff now, YouTube. Or you can just go to YouTube and type in Scammer Payback, or youtube.com/Scammer Payback, or twitch.tv/Scammer Payback. So I know I just threw out like 90 links there, but yeah, just Scammer Payback, anything, you'll be able to find me. And we do live streams. We post videos. We're doing more investigative type videos now. We're changing some of the formats, so not just the calls, but really the psychology and the mental aspect behind it as well. So check out some of the most recent ones we've done. There's some really intriguing pieces of information to protect yourself. So
That's awesome. We'll make sure to
yeah,
link all of those in the show notes. Again, Pierogi,
sure.
thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
This was incredible. I'm so honored to be on the podcast. I thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully we can protect some people with this discussion here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.